Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. We're kind of stepping into a documentary of our own making. We're calling it Survival in the Asphalt Jungle, The Financial Rescue. Let's dive right in.
Picture the 21st century ecosystem for a second. This unforgiving landscape of concrete, glass, and neon lights where we, the modern Homo sapiens, try to thrive and, gather our daily resources. But under the surface of all this modern comfort, there's actually an invisible danger lurking. Now, out in the wild, threats are super obvious, right? You hear a roar in the distance or maybe some rustling in the tall grass. But in our bustling cities, the danger is completely silent. It stalks us without any claws or fangs. And think about how incredibly easy it is to fall prey. You just tap a piece of plastic on a screen or double-click a side button on your phone and boom, a transaction is over in a fraction of a second. There's no visceral pain of handing over physical cash, no big roaring warning sign, but that completely silent, frictionless convenience, it actually masks a highly lethal threat, the modern trap of consumer debt.
So that brings us to Section 1, the silent predator.
You see, nature is deceitful. The trap is literally never obvious at first. What starts as these tiny, seemingly harmless bites, like, say, a spontaneous dinner out, or maybe upgrading your phone when your old one worked just fine. Well, it quickly draws in something much, much darker. Before you even realize you're bleeding resources, a deadly threat has picked up your scent. We call this threat negative compound interest. Honestly, this is the absolute apex predator of the financial habitat. And here's exactly why it's so feared. It does not sleep. It doesn't take weekends off. It operates completely independently of your efforts, just mathematically compounding against you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't just attack you once. It feeds on you continuously, growing larger and way more aggressive. It essentially corners its prey slowly and quietly, right up until that terrifying moment when you look at your bank account and realize, wow, my paycheck is actually no longer enough to survive the winter. Just look at how a perfectly healthy income gets completely drained by the end of the month. You look at your map and you see these massive red zones just devouring your hard-earned resources. And it's not even just the big-ticket purchases. It's the quiet, steady erosion of your wealth. It's those escalating interest payments eating away at your future time. And, perhaps most dangerously, it's what financial experts actually call phantom ant expenses. These are the tiny, practically invisible daily purchases that carry away your wealth piece by piece, just crumb by crumb. It's that premium gym membership you haven't used since January but feel way too guilty to cancel. It's the 3 different streaming apps you completely forgot about. Or think about the $5 daily coffee. That one small daily treat quietly marches away with $150 a month, which is nearly $2,000 a year. It's wild when you put it into perspective.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, mapping your territory.
So how do we actually survive all this? Well, the very first survival instinct you need to develop is to just stop running. You absolutely have to turn around and face your environment. Now, for a lot of people in debt, just opening a banking app triggers a literal fight or flight response. The anxiety is totally real. But here's the thing. You cannot survive a landscape you refuse to look at. That means we must map the territory. And mapping the territory really just comes down to 2 foundational steps. Step 1, identify your water sources. You need to know exactly, down to the absolute drop, how much money is flowing into your ecosystem every single month after taxes. Step 2, track the leaks. You have got to document every single cent going out. Everything from your primary shelter and foraging at the supermarket, right down to those little ant expenses we just talked about. You've got to push past the anxiety, measure every drop of income, and get ready to plug every single leak.
To maintain a really healthy financial biology, we rely on the famous 50-30-20 rule. This framework basically dictates how your resources should flow. So, 50% of your resources absolutely must go to your baseline survival needs. We're talking shelter, food, basic utilities. But here is an incredibly vital insight, so don't miss this. 30% is allocated for your desires. Why? Because a budget with zero fun is going to fail exactly like a diet with zero sugar will fail. A completely austere life just isn't sustainable. You'll inevitably binge and break the budget entirely. Allowing yourself some structured enjoyment actually prevents financial relapse. Finally, that remaining 20% must be strictly deployed for the future. You're either storing it away or actively using it to fight off those predators by paying down your debt.
Okay, moving on to Section 3, storing for winter.
Here's a really hard truth about the jungle. Even in seasons of absolute abundance, when the sun is shining and your resources are plentiful, a sudden storm can just roll in and destroy your shelter. It could be a job loss, a sudden medical emergency, or maybe a massive home repair. Because of that,
you absolutely must craft your own armor. The emergency fund is your ultimate protection against the sudden and inevitable droughts of life. Honestly, it provides this incredible psychological peace of mind. Think of it as a buffer between you and total disaster. When you have this armor, something like a blown transmission on your car is really just a frustrating inconvenience. But without it, that exact same broken transmission can feel like a sudden eviction notice. Without this stash, the slightest disruption in your environment throws you right back to the bottom of the food chain, forcing you to rely on credit cards and debt just to survive the week.
Building this stash requires a pretty strict evolutionary timeline, and honestly, it starts today. Day 1. Open a separate high-yield savings account. This is absolutely vital for 2 reasons. First, your stash has to be safely away at a completely different bank than your everyday checking account. That way, it can't be instantly consumed by impulsive temptations. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Second, a high-yield account actually earns positive interest. This means you are finally taking the predator's greatest weapon, compound interest, and using it as a tool for your own growth. By month 1, your goal is to store at least 1 month of basic survival expenses, and then by month 6, you want to gather enough resources to survive 3 to 6 months of total drought. That right there is when true security really begins.
Let's jump into Section 4, Annihilating the Debt.
So, once your provisions are safely stored away, this thrilling shift happens in your narrative. It's like the documentary music suddenly changes. You are no longer the prey. You are now the hunter. It is time to turn your sights on that pack of debts that have been stalking your peace of mind and basically launch a massive counterattack. We actually have 2 distinct, highly effective tactical methods at our disposal to decimate this pack. Let's take a look at exactly how you can secure your freedom.
Choosing the right hunting strategy depends entirely on understanding that personal finance is, well, often much more personal than it is finance. First up, we have the snowball method. Here, you target the smallest prey first, so your debt with the absolute lowest balance, while just paying the minimum on all the rest. Now, you might be wondering, why do this if it isn't mathematically optimal? Great question. It's because behavioral psychology tells us that killing off a debt completely and quickly releases a massive hit of dopamine. It boosts your morale, it builds crazy momentum, and it proves to you that you can actually win this fight. If you struggle with motivation, this is absolutely your weapon of choice. On the other hand, we have the avalanche method. This one targets the most venomous predator, the debt with the highest interest rate. Now, this requires stoic patience and serious mathematical discipline. It definitely takes longer to see your first real win, but mathematically speaking, it saves you the most resources in the long run. The truth is, both methods work incredibly well. You simply have to choose the weapon that fits your unique psychology.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 5, A New Ecosystem. When you finally map your territory, build up your armor, and successfully hunt down those debts, an astonishing transformation actually occurs. You master your instincts. The chaotic, threatening environment around you begins to change into something entirely different, a thriving habitat. Just contrast the constant, suffocating anxiety of where we started with the absolute serenity of this new state. Just imagine the physical feeling of waking up, checking your accounts, and seeing that your debts have been completely, 100% eradicated. Your winter reserves in that high-yield savings account are totally full. And most importantly, because you actually have excess resources every month instead of just making loan payments, you are finally able to plant seeds for the future. You've officially evolved from a frantic survivor into an investor. And honestly, this is what generating long-term prosperity actually looks like in your daily life.
The concrete and glass around us? Well, that's never going to change. You obviously can't control inflation. You can't control the broader economy, corporate layoffs, or global markets. The rules of the asphalt jungle are, and always will be, pretty severe. But while you can't control the jungle itself, you can absolutely control your own habitat. Mastering these biological financial habits permanently alters your experience within it. By learning to map your territory and properly manage your harvest, you literally transform the financial wilderness from a mortal threat into a paradise of tranquility. You get to dictate the terms of your environment, moving away from a place of fear straight into a position of profound power.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question as we wrap up this explainer. Take a look at your own habitat. Look at your daily habits. Are you going to continue letting negative compound interest and those sneaky phantom expenses just hunt you down? Will you remain the prey, or will you take control of your resources, build up your armor, and become the apex predator of your own financial jungle? The choice is entirely yours. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I will see you in the next explainer.